The High Republic is a new era in Star Wars. It's set 200 years before the events in the prequels, in the so-called Golden Era of the Jedi. The Jedi and the Republic are expanding their influence into the outer regions with Chancellor Lina So's Starlight Beacon project. At the same time, the Nihil, a group of marauders, feel like the Republic's new expansions are imposing on their sphere of influence. That's basically where we are at the start of this era. So today we are discussing the High Republic era. This era is so far only explored in books and comics. Before I started reading any of the books, I felt relatively uninterested by this era. Getting into a whole new era felt like a big task and I wasn't sure if I even wanted to do it. Also, the promotional stuff failed to make me interested. It just didn't seem very exciting or appealing at all. But I gave it a chance and I am very happy that I did. In this video I'll talk mostly about these three very nice looking books, which were released in the first wave of Phase 1. This video is spoiler free if you are concerned about that. I'll obviously be describing some things in a bit more detail than any of the promotional content has so far, so if you've already decided that you want to get into this era and you don't want any spoilers, then why are you even watching this video? First we will talk about Light of the Jedi, which is the first main novel, or well, the first adult novel. It does its job well, which is to introduce the era and many of the characters. We have people like Avar Kriss, Guriaga, Elsar Mann, and Loden Greatstorm. And basically the plot of the novel is about how the Jedi and the Republic work together in a time of crisis when a spaceship breaking in hyperspace leads to a huge disaster. The story kind of jumps from chapter to chapter. There's a bunch of different characters in different locations and we get to follow all of these different people. And I have to say, this has to be one of my favorite Star Wars novels that I've read. It was difficult to put the book down at times and I think I read it in like 2 days. And not only does this book introduce the Jedi and the Republic during this era, we also get to know more about the Nihil, or the Nihil. I don't know how to say that, but anyway, we will talk about that a little bit later in this video. A Test of Courage is the second book that I read from this era. It's a junior novel fit for kids from like 8 to 12 years old. What tells you that this is a junior novel is the length of the book. It's over 250 pages, but as you can see there is not much text on each page. And the fact that the characters are all younger, the oldest one being 16, then the language is also, I feel like, a bit simpler. Then we also have these artworks. I was confused why there were these weird yellow pages, but turns out there was an artwork in between them. Even though it's a junior novel, it should not be underestimated. The plot of the novel is about a group of kids, 2 Jedi and 2 regular kids. They are the sole survivors of a cruise ship exploding, and they have to survive on a jungle moon called Vivo or something. And something I have to say is that one of the kids' name is Honesty, and honestly, it was not fun reading that name over and over again. It's like naming your kid Kindness or Intelligence. It's a bit hard to get used to a name like that. Other than that, the book was surprisingly dark. I won't say more than that, not to spoil it, but I was a bit taken aback on how dark it was and how heavy topics it dealt with. Into the Dark is the third and last novel. This one is classified as a young adult novel because the main characters are teenagers. This one was actually a bit hard to get through. The start was very slow and I also didn't really like any of the characters too much. I didn't hate them or dislike them, but they just were not too interesting, to be honest. But it's about a group of Jedi and then a ship and its crew going to the frontier, so basically Outer Rim. But they ran into some trouble and end up on a abandoned space station. And there is this subplot with like a flashback type thingy, which I felt like was very unnecessary. In my opinion, it didn't really add much to the book. But at the midpoint, stuff really started happening and the book became a lot more interesting, and the second half of the book, I would say, was really good. Also, at times I didn't really understand the orientation of things or the environment and the layout of things and like what was happening exactly. This might just be because English isn't my first or even second language, but it doesn't usually happen that I don't know what's going on when I read a book, even if I read the same part over and over again. So that was a bit weird. And I haven't heard anyone else talk about this, so it might just be me, or it's probably just is me. Then we need to talk about Geode, who is not a rock, he's a Venetian or Venetian. I heard about him before I read the book and I was a bit confused by it. I saw a lot of negativity around it, surprisingly from people who had not read the book, but I saw a lot of positive feedback from people who had. I decided not to judge poor Geode before I got to know him, and well, a lot of the positive feedback stated that he was written brilliantly and just really spectacular and whatnot, but I don't know if I agree. He was written just like you would expect him to be written, but I really didn't mind him at all, and he ended up being a pretty fun character. And after all, this is Star Wars. There's so many strange things in this universe, and this character is just one among many, and it's not worth getting upset about. Then something I want to discuss in a bit more detail is how in this era the Jedi see the Force in different ways, or feel the Force in different ways, and I'm going to read you an extract from Light of the Jedi. What she heard as a song, Elsar Man saw as a deep, endless, storm-tossed sea. The Wookiee Buryaga was a single leaf on a gigantic tree with deep dug roots and sky-high limbs. Douglas Sunwhale saw the Force as a huge, interlocked set of gears made of an endless variety of materials, from crystal to bone. Bel Zettifar danced with fire. Woden Greatstorm danced with wind. I think this concept makes a lot of sense. The Force isn't just one definite thing, and it could manifest itself differently in different people. Different people will have individual connections to the Force. I'm just interested to see what the reason is that we don't really see interpretations like this in the eras we are more familiar with. The only explanation I can think of is that these different manifestations of the Force was lost as the Jedi lost their way a little bit, maybe, something like that. My theory is that something big will happen in this era, and the Republic and the Jedi will be in grave danger, and obviously the Jedi will win in the end, but at a great cost, which will lead to a change in the order and them becoming more strict and they kind of lose this freedom and individuality. I also think that Yoda might have a big role in this change. Then we need to talk about the Nihil. When I first heard about the Nihil, I thought that there is no way that these raiders could be a real threat to the Jedi and the Republic. I came to realize very quickly that I was wrong, and the Nihil are not to be underestimated. The big villain seems to be the Eye of the Nihil, so the leader of the Nihil, Marchion Ro, and he's a compelling but also very mysterious character, and we don't really know yet what he is capable of. The Nihil can definitely be great villains, and they have been so far. My only criticism would be that it's very black and white. The Nihil are vile and just straight up bad people. There is no moral ambiguity, which could have been interesting, but I mean, so far I've really liked them as enemies and villains, and we'll just have to see how they evolve in that role. Safe to say, I had a very wrong image of this era. There has already been a lot of death and violence, which kinda surprised me. I thought we'll just get some lighthearted stories about the Jedi in their golden age. Now it seems like this might actually be a story about how this golden era came to an end. If this is the way this era is going, then I'm very excited about it. This era might not be for everyone, but that's how it is with all things. My overall conclusion is that this era is new and fresh, but still very much Star Wars. And it's not an attempt to remake the Old Republic, so don't worry about that. Anyway, I hope you liked this video, and I will see you again next week.